Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Aini Nurwidia Setiadi, and today we are exploring a grammar topic that sounds tricky but is actually super useful. There are noun clause and adjective clause. If you've ever been confused by long sentence that seems to have a whole mini sentence inside them, this video is for you. By the end, you'll understand a noun clause and adjective clause, and of course, you will be able to use them by yourself. Let's jump in. So let's begin with the first questions. What is noun clause? According to Asturiano, a noun clause is a subordinate clause. That means it's a part of a sentence that functions as a noun. So, just like a single noun, this whole clause can be the subjects, the objects, or the complement in the sentence. Let's look at this example. The first sentence, I don't know when he's coming. In that sentence, the noun clause is when he's coming. And then the second example is I insist that she submits her assignment on time. And at that sentence, the noun clause is that she submits her assignment on time. And then the third example is they wonder whether you need help. At that sentence, the noun clause is whether you need help. Next. Okay. Before we are exploring various examples of noun clause, let's discuss the first type of noun clause. It is the that clause. As the name suggests, a that clause is simply a noun clause that begins with the word that. As Astuti explained, its structures looks exactly like normal simple sentence you make to state a fact. The only difference is that we put the word that in front of it to connect it to the main part of the sentence. So that's about that clause. Let's take a look the example of that clause. Now let's look at some specific example to see the different job as a that clause can do in a sentence. All of these sentences use the same basic idea that the students need more reading time, but in each one it has different grammatical functions. The first example, that the students need more reading time, is clear. The syntactic functions of that clause is as object. In this first sentence, the entire clause that the students need more reading time is the subjects. What is clear? That the students need more reading time is clear. So the clause itself is the person or thing performing the actions are being described. And then, second example, it is clear that the students need more reading time. The syntactic functions of that clause as adjective process complement. This sentence means the same thing as the first one, but it's structured differently. Here, the word it is the subjects. The clause that the student need more reading time comes after the adjective clear. Its job is to complete the meaning of the adjective. It tells us what is clear. And then the third example, the teacher believes that the students need more reading time. The syntactic functions of that clause is as direct object. This is very common use. The clause is the objects of the verb believes. What does the teacher believe? She believes that the students need more reading time. And then take a look to the fourth example. Her opinion is that the students need more reading time. The syntactic functions of that clause as subject complement. Here, the clause that the students need more reading time comes after the verb is. It is renaming or describing the subject. Her opinions. Her opinion is what? Her opinion is that the students need more reading time. And then next to the next example. Her opinions that the students need more reading time is reasonable. The synthetic functions of that clause as a positive. In this sentence, notice the commas. The clause that the students need more reading time is an appositive. It's placed right next to the noun opinions to give extra informations about it. It's like a restatement. You could remove the part between the commas and the sentence would still make sense. Her opinion is reasonable. And then take a look to the last example. Her opinion that the students need more reading time seems reasonable. The syntactic functions of that clause is as non-pros complement. This looks similar, but there are no commas. Here, the clause is essential. It's not just extra informations. It defines which opinions we are talking about. It is the specific opinion about the students needing more reading time that seems reasonable. It completes the non-pros, her opinion. So, as you can see, the same that clause can serve many different purposes. It can be the subject, the object, a complement, or an oppositive. The key is to look at its positions and relationship to the main part of the sentence. We just learned about that clause. Now let's look at another type of noun clause. Noun clause with WH words. According to our study at all, these are noun clauses that use questions words as their subordinators, such as what, who, why, where, when, how much, whenever, wherever, and so on. Let's look at the example of noun clauses that start with WH words. Remember, these clauses act like a single noun in the sentence. The first example, what the student said surprised everyone. The functions of WH words clause at that sentence is as subjects. In this sentence, what the student said is the subjects. What surprised everyone? The clause what the student said did. And then the second example, she knows where the teacher keeps the test paper. The function as direct objects. Here, where the teacher keeps the test papers is the objects. What does she know? She knows the entire piece of information. And then the third example, this place is where we first met. The functions as subjects complements. This clause, where we first met, describe the subject's this place. It completes the meaning by telling us what this place is. And then the first example, it is uncertain why the meeting was cancelled. The function as adjective complement, and then the clause why the meeting was cancelled completes the adjective uncertain. What is uncertain? The reason why the meeting was cancelled. And then the fifth example, the big questions why the meeting was cancelled still has no answer. The function as a positive. See the commas. The clause why the meeting was cancelled is just extra information. It restates what the big question is. You, we could remove it and the sentence still makes sense. And then the last example, the reason why the meeting was cancelled remains unclear. The functions of that clause is non-pros complement. Here, there are no commas at that sentence. The clause why the meeting was cancelled is essential. It defines exactly which reason we are talking about. Now let's talk about noun clause with whether and if. These clauses use for hidden yes or no questions inside a sentence. For example, The question, is it raining, can become, I don't know if it is raining, or I don't know whether it is raining. As Asturiero mentions, while weather clause can perform various functions, the nominal if clause can only serve as an adjective complement or as a direct object. We can discuss in the next slides for the detail. Now let's break down the difference when we should use whether or if. We can use if in casual everyday conversations. For example, we might say, check if the store is open. Or, however, we should choose whether in these situations. Informal writing, and then when the clause is the subject of the sentence, after a preposition like about or on, when it is followed directly by or not. A good rule for us is when we are unsure, we can choose whether. It is almost always correct, works in every situations. Now, let's see how this works in real sentences. Looking at this example help us understand the different jobs these clauses can do. In the first sentence, the whether clause is the subject. It is the main topic of the sentence. Whether children should learn English early is still discussed. That clauses has a role as a subject of the sentence. And then in the next one, the if clause as an adjective complement. It completes the idea of adjective unclear. It is unclear if games help children learn better. The if clause complete the meaning of the adjective unclear. And then here are the if clause in the direct objects in the third example. It tells us what the teachers wonder in the sentence. The teacher wonder if the students understand the lesson. The syntactic functions of if clause as direct objects. The direct object of the verb wonder. And then in the sentence, the whether clauses is a subject complement. It explains what the main question is. In the sentence, the main question is whether play helps learning. The whether clause explains or identifies the subject's questions. And then in the sentence, the problem whether a young learner focus in the class is often discussed. The syntactic functions of whether clause in that sentence as a positive. The whether clause, set up by commas, clarifies or restate the noun problem. And then the last example, the idea whether stories help learning is interesting. The syntactic functions of whether clause is as non-pros complement. The whether clause adds meaning to the noun idea. So that's the example of noun clauses with whether or if. And now let's wrap up everything we have learned about noun clause. In conclusions, a noun clause is a group of words with subjects and verb that works like a single noun in a sentence. Its main job are to act as a subject, verb object, subject complement, adjective complement, appositive, or a noun phrase complement. We can usually spot them because they start with the word that and then the word WH word like what, where, or why, or so on. And also, the clause also start by whether or if. And remember the most important rule. If is quite limited, we can only use it for direct object or adjective complement, but whether is safer to use in any positions or in any syntactic functions of the clause. Most importantly, noun clause cannot stand alone. as complete sentence. Their job is to add more detail and complex idea to main sentence, which makes our speaking and writing much richer. That's all about noun clause. Now we are moved to discuss about adjective clause. Okay, now let's move on to the second topic of presentations. It is adjective clause. What is adjective clause? An adjective clause is a dependent clause that functions as an adjective to modify a noun or pronoun in a sentence. An adjective clause is a part of noun clause. The clauses don't perform syntactic functions within the sentence level, but within the prose level. Then there are two different types of adjective clause based on the structure. There are finite, finite adjective clause and non-finite adjective clause. Finite adjective clause are subordinate clause introduced by relative pronouns like who, whom, whose, which, and that. It also called relative clauses. And then non-finite adjective clause that include adjectival in participle clauses, adjectival passive participle clauses, and adjectival to infinitive clauses. Here is the basic patterns for forming an adjective clause for specifically for finite clause. We can take a simple sentence and connect it to a main sentence using a relative pronoun. For example, we have two simple sentences. The girl is beautiful. She lives in Bali. We can combine them using the relative pronouns who. The result is the girl who lives in Bali is beautiful. The, the clause who lives in Bali now acts as an adjective describing which girl we are talking about. Okay. The key to use adjective clauses correctly is choosing the right relative pronoun. According to British Council in 2025, here are the common ones and their uses of relative pronouns. Use who for people when they are the subjects doing the actions, and then use whom for people when they are the objects receiving the actions. This is more formal. And then use whose to show possessions or ownership. Use that for people or things. It gives essential information about the noun. And then use which for things. Using the correct pronouns helps make our sentences clear and accurate. Now that we understand the rules, let's look at some practical example in the next slides. Example of adjective clause. Now let's look at some example to see how adjective clause and relative pronouns works together in real sentence. The first example. The teacher who teaches English is very kind. Relative pronoun use who. Here the clause who teaches English describes the noun teacher. It tells us which teacher is very kind. And then the second example. I bought a book which has colorful pictures. The relative noun that used in that sentence is which. In this sentence, which has colorful picture describe the noun book. It specifies which book I bought. And then the third example, she likes movies that are exciting. The relative pronouns at that sentence is used that. The clause that are exciting describes the noun movies. It tells us what kind of movies she likes. And then the first example, the sentence, the man whom I met yesterday is a doctor. The relative pronoun on that sentence is whom. Here, whom I met yesterday describe the noun man. Whom is used because the man is the objects, the one I met. And then the fifth example, I know a girl whose father is a pilot. the relative pronoun on that sentence, on that adjective clause is whose. The clause whose father is a pilot describes the noun girl, whose shows possessions and tells us something about the girl's families. And then the sixth example, this is the park where we played as kids. The relative pronoun at that sentence is where. Where we played, uh, where we played as kids describe the noun park. It gives us extra information about the location and its history. So as you can see from all these examples, the main job of the adjective clause is to give us more information about the noun and make our sentences more detailed and specific. And now let's move to non-infinite non-finite adjective clause. These clauses don't use a main relative pronoun like who or which, and instead use different verb form to describe a noun. The first type is adjectival ing participle clause. According to Suchiati, this is certain adjective clause where the verb ends in ing. It is used when the relative pronoun in a full clause would be the subject. For example, instead of saying the boy who is standing at the gate is my son, we can shorten it to the boy standing at the gate is my son. The in clause standing at the gate work as adjective to describe the boy. And then the next type is the adjectival passive participle clause. This type uses a past participle verb like written, made, broken to describe noun. It shows that the noun is the receiver of the actions. For example, the full clause, the book which was written by the author won an award, can be reduced to the book written by the author won an award. The prosa written by the author acts as an adjective, telling us more about the book. And then the 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 adjectival to infinitive clause. This type uses to plus base verb like to write, to do, to describe a noun. It often shows a purpose or something that needs to be done. For example, instead of saying she has a paper that she needs to write, we can say she has a paper to write. The process to write describes the noun paper. So to summarize this non-finite clause, we can use an ing verb for an active meaning, a past participle for a passive meaning, and a to infinitive to show purpose or necessity. All of them help us describe noun in more concise way. Let's now conclude our sections on adjective clauses. In summary, we have learned that there are two main types of adjective clause, finite and not non-finite. Finite clauses are rela- Finite clauses use relative pronouns like who, which, and that, and they have a verb with specific tense. Non-finite clauses, on the other hand, don't use those pronouns and instead use verb from like the ing participle, the past participle, or the to infinitive. This verb don't show a specific tense. The most important job of both types is the same: to add informations, important details, and descriptions to noun or pronoun. This makes our sentence much clearer, more specific, and more informative. Okay, that's bring us to the end of our presentations about noun clause and adjective clause. Thank you so much for your attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.